A woman lies peacefully asleep in her dimly lit bed as someone softly calls out to Estelle. A voice desperately pleads for someone to please take care of the resting babies. A tearful woman tenderly holds another's hand and firmly promises to take care of the children. Weeping bitterly beside the crib, she vows to protect the infants even if it costs her own life. The story officially begins with Chapter 1, featuring a portrait of a distinguished smiling man and an elegant young woman. The scene transitions to the grand, imposing exterior of a sprawling noble estate. Standing dramatically on the grand staircase with another woman clinging to him, a man points forward and publicly annuls his engagement to Estelle. Stunned by the sudden declaration, Estelle stands quietly as she is told she must atone for all her misdeeds. She quietly closes her eyes as the heavy, accusatory words wash over her. Internally, she notes that even in her previous life, she never encountered anyone quite this awful. She is actually a reincarnated Japanese woman now living as 18-year-old Estelle de Leon, a duke's daughter and the villainess of an otome game called The Name of the Rose. Pondering her strange situation, she admits she has no experience with otome games and barely understands the world she has been reincarnated into. She reflects on her life as a serious, top-tier student who became engaged to Crown Prince Roland to meet her parents' expectations, expecting him to escort her to tonight's Magic Academy graduation party. Instead, she finds herself caught in a classic villainous annulment event as Roland stands beside the game's heroine, the Baron's daughter Cecile. As someone pleads for the prince to wait, Estelle apathetically accepts the situation since she never actually liked him anyway. Another noble lady steps forward, murmuring quietly as she observes the dramatic spectacle unfolding before them. Lady Louise de Coligny, a count's daughter, fiercely defends Estelle's acknowledged seriousness and demands to know what crime such an earnest person could have possibly committed. The crowd readily sides with the calm Estelle, whispering that Prince Roland was always unreasonable and that Cecile actually caused more problems. Furious at the whispers, the Crown Prince shouts for silence and orders Estelle's exile, accusing her of criminally harassing Cecile out of jealousy. Prince Roland glares down with an arrogant, self-satisfied smirk plastered across his face. Unfazed by his furious bluster, Estelle merely stares back with dull, utterly exhausted eyes. She coldly thinks to herself that the harsh punishment is worth it if she never has to see his self-satisfied face again. Her sharp eyes narrow slightly as she fully accepts her sudden destitution and looming exile. Wondering where the queen is during this chaos, Estelle decides that staying at the academy wouldn't do her any good anyway. She recalls that Queen Elizabeth de Valier currently rules the country since the king passed away a few years prior. Her only son, Roland, unfortunately holds an infamous reputation as a foolish, narcissistic, and womanizing crown prince. The worried queen and queen dowager had specifically requested Estelle to become the queen consort to properly support the kingdom and balance the foolish heir. Taking this royal duty seriously, Estelle spent her days diligently studying at a desk while her strict instructor observed her progress. Recognizing her own genius, she realizes Roland deliberately arranged for the queen and queen dowager to recuperate at a distant hot spring so they could not intervene. Disgusted that his mind only works for petty schemes, she easily concludes the entire engagement annulment was perfectly calculated. Shrugging off the ultimate betrayal, she turns her back on the dramatic spectacle and mutters that it simply does not matter. Walking gracefully out of the grand hall, she decides it is time to pack her things and leave this life behind. She compares this drama to her past life, where she lived as an ordinary civil servant who entered an arranged marriage without ever experiencing romance or having children. A shadowy figure from her past addresses two men, Pascal and Daniel, stating he has high expectations for them both. She vividly remembers an arrogant man from her past telling her that a plain girl like her should be grateful to marry such a handsome man. Snapping back to the present, she faces the unyielding fury of her family as they call her a disgrace to the ducal house for letting the engagement get annulled. Cast out from her grand estate, she walks toward a waiting carriage while her younger brother apologizes tearfully. Her little brother watches her leave with a deeply pained expression, repeatedly murmuring how sorry he is. Holding a potted plant, Estelle smiles warmly and reassures Daniel that she will be fine, though he wishes he were more grown up to help her. Daniel blinks in mild confusion and points out the strange potted plant she actively chose to take with her. She softly explains that she picked up the budless rose from a trash heap during her first year and simply grew attached to it over time. Thanking him for his sincere concern, she tells him to contact her immediately if anything happens. As they finally part ways, a desperate final plea is made for her to please take care of herself out there. Carrying her modest belongings in a simple bag, she begins her solitary walk away from her former life. She successfully makes her way to the kingdom of Bruton, a longtime ally and neighbor to her homeland of Valier. Stepping fully into the new city streets, she takes a breath and realizes that after everything, she is finally free. Despite her newfound freedom, she glances around the unfamiliar architecture and wonders what she should actually do from here. Suddenly, a sharp, predatory eye narrows as a shadowy figure locks onto her vulnerable position. A group of shady figures begins to approach her, ominously commenting on her presence out on such a fine night. Surrounded by street thugs, she calmly deduces that the dangerous streets and her elegant dress have made her an obvious target. Peering curiously out the window, a woman wonders aloud if the stranger outside is genuinely trying to help her with nothing but a frying pan. A delicate hand carefully sets down a potted plant as a voice gently expresses appreciation for the gesture while still harboring a lingering hesitation. Holding her sturdy bag, a long-haired woman in a flowing cloak firmly warns that using such a mundane kitchen tool will only get the defender hurt instead. Eyes narrowing with unwavering resolve, she boldly steps forward and declares her intention to strike the assailants down herself. Unleashing a sudden burst of invisible magical force, the cloaked woman effortlessly blasts a burly thug backward through the air with bone-jarring kinetic impact. Chaos erupts in the narrow alleyway as multiple thugs are simultaneously launched into the air by rapid, unseen magical shockwaves. Trembling violently, a remaining thug gasps in sheer terror as he surveys his defeated comrades groaning on the cobblestones around the mysterious, glowing woman. Scrambling desperately to their feet, the humiliated men flee in absolute panic while screaming over their shoulders that they will definitely remember this utter defeat. Adjusting her grip on her frying pan, the rescued woman stammers her absolute awe at the stranger's incredible strength, though the cloaked savior humbly denies possessing any special power. Introducing herself with a cheerful smile, Monica Garnier admits she never even got a chance to swing her weapon, while her savior reveals her name is Estelle and graciously thanks Monica for her brave concern. A charming wooden sign proudly displays the inviting emblem of a local diner. The grand exterior of a traditional, multi-story building stands peacefully under the bright, clear sky. Bonding over a warm bowl of stew, Monica emphatically agrees that men simply cannot be trusted after listening to the heartbreaking revelation that Estelle's fiancé abruptly annulled their engagement. Estelle passionately confirms her mutual understanding of this bitter, universal truth regarding the cruelty of men. A melancholic flashback reveals that during her youthful days working as a humble waitress in another bustling town, Monica also endured a truly terrible and life-altering experience. During that vulnerable period of her life, the naive young woman crossed paths with an older, exceedingly wealthy merchant who appeared respectable and kind. Overcoming her initial anxieties about their significant age gap, she foolishly believed his tragic tales of profound loneliness since losing his wife and completely threw herself into a blinding romance. However, the very second she joyfully revealed she was pregnant, the merchant's gentle demeanor vanished and his cruel attitude drastically changed. Staring down at her with chilling apathy, he coldly apologized but flatly refused to acknowledge the existence of the unborn baby. Shattering her heart completely, the callous merchant sneered that he did not even know for certain if the child she carried was truly his own. Slapping his hand away in a spray of furious tears, a devastated and enraged Monica screamed that she had absolutely heard enough of his venomous lies. Furiously demanding that he never show his cowardly face to her again, she fiercely resolved to protect and raise her child entirely on her own. Fleeing her painful past, the determined single mother relocated to this quiet new town and successfully poured her heart into opening a cozy diner. Explaining that running a business entirely alone as a woman often makes people look down on her, Monica playfully asks Estelle a favor, revealing she had been actively thinking of hiring a strong guard. Desperately pleading for a stable position, Estelle eagerly volunteers for the job while proudly highlighting her excellent culinary skills. With a remarkably confident smile and a glowing, intimidating aura of raw magic, Estelle boldly declares that she is physically and magically stronger than most men. Delighted by this perfect arrangement, Monica claps her hands in sheer joy and graciously asks if Estelle would mind living and working right there at the diner, noting how much it would help them both. Sweetening the already generous deal, Monica reveals there is a comfortable extra room available upstairs and promises to pay the powerful mage a proper, fair wage for her services. Tears of overwhelming relief welling in her eyes, Estelle enthusiastically accepts the life-changing offer and shouts her profound, heartfelt thanks. Time peacefully passes as the morning sun casts a warm, golden glow over the bustling, successful exterior of the diner. A voice echoes warmly through the wooden halls, calling up the stairs to ask if a specific someone can come down to help. A close-up intimately reveals the delicate, refined facial features and elegantly flowing hair of the person being summoned from the upper floor. Adjusting her perfectly round glasses with a practiced flick of her wrist, the young woman brightly confirms she is ready to help out. Bustling with infectious energy, she leans forward and loudly calls out that she is immediately on her way down the stairs. Bursting energetically through the floral curtains in a pristine maid outfit, the disguised noble introduces herself to the patrons as Emma Garnier, apologizing profusely for keeping everyone waiting. Dark internal narration reveals her deep, paralyzing fear that if anyone were to discover she is secretly an exiled noble, this peaceful shop and their newfound life would be in catastrophic danger. To ruthlessly protect their sanctuary, she relies entirely on elaborate wigs and magical items to alter her eye color, lamenting that true transformation magic is exceedingly rare and far beyond her personal capabilities. A cheerful male coworker named Matt enthusiastically praises Emma's unparalleled brilliance, loudly demanding to know how she consistently comes up with such incredible ideas. Serving a steaming, incredibly fragrant dish, Emma beams with genuine pride and expresses her sheer gladness that her innovative culinary creations are considered so deeply delicious. While Monica proudly declares Emma to be an absolute genius, she playfully teases Matt about why he is sporting such an inexplicably smug expression over someone else's achievement. Emma silently reflects that in this rudimentary world where cooking merely involves basic grilling or boiling heavily seasoned with mundane salt and pepper, her clever invention of a soy sauce equivalent using soybeans became a massive, unprecedented hit. A bustling, chaotic line of eager customers proves the immense success of her culinary innovations, as soybeans yielded rich soy sauce and miso, while simple wheat flour allowed the miraculous creation of thick udon noodles. These profoundly rich, newly introduced Japanese-style comfort foods quickly grew incredibly popular, causing the humble diner's business to flourish far beyond their wildest expectations. A smiling, confident Matt expertly flips a heavy pan, clearly benefiting from the diner's massively enhanced culinary repertoire and bustling atmosphere. The cheerful, unstoppable trio of Monica, Matt, and Emma stand shoulder to shoulder in the busy kitchen, beautifully united by their shared success and hard work. Later that quiet evening, gazing lovingly at the diner's shadowy exterior, Monica expresses her deep, heartfelt gratitude to Estelle for everything she has miraculously accomplished. Monica tearfully admits that Estelle's unwavering presence has not only made the shop wildly successful, but has finally given her the profound peace of mind needed to safely face her impending childbirth. Completely overwhelmed with pure emotion, Monica sincerely calls her magical savior a true, living goddess of fortune. Chuckling warmly behind her round glasses, the brilliantly disguised Estelle playfully dismisses the incredibly high praise, gently telling Monica she is wildly exaggerating the truth. Sitting quietly in the peaceful, moonlit shadows, Estelle reflects with a soft smile that it was actually Monica who generously gave her a desperately needed place to truly belong. Surrounded by the warm smiles of Monica and Matt, a deeply moved Estelle reflects that this is the absolute happiest moment of her life. Having rarely felt familial love before, she deeply cherishes the profound warmth of her newfound home. A peaceful, utterly contented smile graces Estelle's face as she looks fondly at her cherished companions through her round spectacles. Returning her gentle gaze, Matt offers a soft, sincere smile and murmurs a heartfelt expression of his own gratitude. Time swiftly passes, and an anxious but deeply devoted Estelle carefully presses her ear against Monica's heavily pregnant belly. Beads of nervous sweat form on Estelle's face as she releases a tense groan, clearly overwhelmed by the incredibly stressful situation unfolding before her. Roused suddenly from her panicked sleep, a groggy Estelle blinks up at a distressed Monica hovering urgently over her bedside. Realization strikes like a terrifying lightning bolt as Estelle's eyes snap wide open behind her lenses, instantly understanding that the fateful moment has arrived. Panicking but fiercely determined, Matt urgently shouts for them to hold on while he desperately sprints out to fetch the doctor right away. Monica endures a grueling and agonizingly harrowing labor, prompting a grim doctor to issue a dire warning that the mother's life is in severe danger. Estelle gasps in sheer horror as the solemn physician suggests they may be completely forced to choose between saving the child or the mother. Tears welling rapidly in her terrified eyes, a desperate Estelle screams out Monica's name in agonizing, heartbreaking disbelief. Fighting bravely through unimaginable pain, a stubbornly resilient Monica weakly but firmly vows that she will absolutely give birth to her child. Sobbing helplessly beside the blood-stained bed, Estelle listens as her fading friend uses her absolute last ounces of strength to utter a final, desperate plea. After enduring 10 grueling hours of agonizing labor, the devastating silence of the room is finally broken by the piercing cries of newborn twins. Lying weakly against the pillows as her life rapidly fades, a pale Monica begs her dearest friend to look after her precious children. Cradling the fragile infants to her chest, a weeping Estelle fiercely promises to protect them even if it ultimately costs her own life. A peaceful, incredibly relieved smile touches Monica's pale lips as she breathes out a final, profound expression of everlasting gratitude. Estelle unleashes a heartbreaking wail of absolute agony as Monica peacefully passes away, leaving behind a solemn, tragic wish for her children's happiness. Refusing to let crushing grief consume her, a newly determined Estelle balances towering stacks of plates in the bustling diner, having absolutely no time to drown in sorrow. To keep their beloved and increasingly frantic shop safely afloat, Estelle responsibly hires a cheerful new worker named Sally to manage the immense workload. Balancing chaotic diner shifts with endless diaper changes, Estelle pours her entire heart into carefully and relentlessly raising the twin girls. 6 incredibly fast years peacefully pass by as the thriving diner continues to warmly welcome a steady, loyal stream of hungry customers. Pausing her busy shift, Emma politely listens as an elderly patron playfully suggests marriage and happily reveals her son's secret infatuation. Maintaining her flawless customer service smile, Emma gracefully accepts the kind compliment while expertly deflecting the romantic proposition. Striding briskly across the wooden floorboards, Emma internally reassures herself that she is perfectly content simply working at the vibrant, lively shop. A seated male patron glances over his shoulder, completely captivated by the disguised noblewoman's undeniable grace and tireless, inspiring work ethic. The cheerful patrons exchange amused smiles as they relax happily at the counter, thoroughly enjoying the warm, inviting atmosphere Emma masterfully cultivates. The lively ambience is suddenly and wonderfully interrupted by the energetic sound of 2 small pairs of boots bursting joyfully into the busy diner. Dropping to her knees with a radiant smile, Emma pulls the adorable twins, Coco and Mia, into a fierce and immensely loving hug. An older customer fondly observes the heartwarming reunion, warmly complimenting the young girls on growing as beautiful and bright as ever. Blushing with innocent, infectious delight, the identically dressed twins clasp their hands together in pure excitement at the charming compliment. Turning their bright, highly curious eyes toward their adoptive mother, the eager twins cheerfully demand to know what is going on. Scolding her with surprising maturity, the twins point out her patched clothes and demand she immediately report any potential romantic suitors. Stifling a genuine laugh, Emma listens as the selfless girls beg her to buy a new dress and find a sweetheart, promising to be perfectly good girls. Stepping into the lively conversation, a loyal patron gallantly declares that Emma remains absolutely charming regardless of her humble, patched attire. Adjusting her glasses with a highly confident smile, Emma firmly informs her daughters that she has absolutely no need for a lover when she has something far more important. Tilting their heads in adorable, wide-eyed confusion, the young girls innocently echo her bold statement and wonder what could possibly be more important. Looking down at them with overwhelming, boundless affection, Emma softly reveals that they are undoubtedly her most precious treasures. Standing tall and proud behind the wooden counter, she gazes around the bustling room and firmly adds the diner itself to her list of beloved treasures. A melancholic yet deeply grateful smile touches Emma's lips as she softly reflects on the incredible, painful sacrifice that directly built this cherished life. Remembering her fallen friend's agonizing final moments, Emma solemnly acknowledges the heavy, beautiful cost of bringing the twins safely into the world. Squeezing the girls gently, she internally reaffirms her sacred, unbreakable vow to protect the incredibly precious legacy that Monica entrusted to her care. A fierce, unbreakable maternal resolve hardens in Emma's eyes as she silently swears to fiercely protect their happiness against any incoming threat. Burying her face in their soft hair, she wraps both little girls in a deeply protective, profoundly emotional embrace that speaks far louder than words. The tender, emotional moment is abruptly shattered by an urgent, ringing shout from the busy kitchen demanding Emma's immediate attention. A visibly panicked coworker urgently begs Emma to intervene with a seemingly offended gentleman, prompting Emma to confidently take charge of the delicate situation. Smoothing down her apron with practiced, absolute professional calm, Emma boldly strides out into the dining area to personally confront the dissatisfied customer. Approaching the wooden table, Emma drops her gaze with a polite, deferential demeanor fully prepared to brilliantly defuse any rising tension. Emma stops dead in her tracks, utterly stunned into silence by the sudden, highly intense gaze of a remarkably handsome and imposing gentleman. Analyzing his striking posture and refined features, Emma's sharp instincts instantly deduce that despite his commoner's clothing, this mysterious man is undeniably a high-ranking noble. A bold menu layout captures the immediate attention of anyone looking closely at its contents. A bespectacled waitress smiles patiently as an exasperated customer complains that the unfamiliar menu items are just an elaborate gimmick to draw in unsuspecting patrons. The flustered noble quickly retracts his complaint while the smiling waitress apologizes, politely suggesting he try another establishment if their modest food offends his high-class palate. He stammers nervously in his defense, desperately trying to clarify that he simply could not understand what the strange dishes were. Leaning back comfortably in his wooden chair, the blonde noble looks up and curiously asks how she deduced his hidden social status. The waitress clears her throat with a polite ahem to prepare her incredibly blunt explanation. She points out that despite his commoner clothes, his arrogant bearing, unmistakable facial features, and extremely rare hair color completely give away his true noble identity. Suitably chastised, the noble apologizes for his rude behavior and promises to be more careful, sighing that he cannot do anything to hide his hair and face. Crossing his arms in sheer defeat, he closes his eyes and mutters to himself that this entire situation is incredibly troublesome. The waitress offers a gentle, reassuring smile, softly telling the tense man that he does not need to take the matter that seriously. She suddenly leans in uncomfortably close to inspect him, causing the flustered noble to jolt backward in total surprise. He sighs deeply to dismiss his creeping suspicion as mere imagination, secretly admitting he felt he had met her before because he could never forget a bold woman unafraid of nobles. A steaming cup of fresh coffee is unceremoniously placed on the table right in front of him. The noble sits perfectly still, staring intensely at the dark brew as it rests securely on its serving tray. He elegantly brings a silver spoon to his lips to carefully sample the steaming hot beverage. He instantly recoils in genuine pain, dramatically shouting that he has a cat's tongue and absolutely cannot handle the scalding heat. The waitress quickly covers her mouth with her hand, desperately trying to suppress a sudden giggle at his highly exaggerated reaction. Dropping her hand, she immediately asks if the drink was too hot while the embarrassed noble stammers that he is perfectly fine. Watching him recover his composure, she smiles warmly and thinks to herself that this strange man is quite amusing. He delicately wipes his mouth with a crisp napkin, prompting her to silently note that his refined manners are exactly as expected of a noble. Gazing intently at his pretty features, she realizes with a thrill that Coco and Mia would absolutely love such a remarkably handsome face. The tall noble gathers his discarded coat and gracefully stands up from the table, preparing to take his formal leave. A sudden flash of terrifying recognition strikes the waitress, making her pause mid-step as she notices something painfully familiar about his face. As he walks out the heavy wooden door, she forcefully dismisses the creeping dread as her imagination right before someone urgently calls out to Emma. A blonde woman rushes over frantically, demanding to know the identity of the gorgeous man because his hair and eye color look exactly like Coco and Mia. Emma trembles slightly in place, realizing with a rapidly sinking heart that the impossible resemblance is not just her wild imagination. Staring blankly into the distance, she confirms her worst fears that he looks exactly like Coco and Mia, wondering frantically who this mysterious man really is. A dramatic flashback transports the sprawling narrative 6 years into the past, showing the grand castle of the kingdom of Valier as someone furiously screams Roland's name. A furious noblewoman in a lavish, jewel-encrusted gown shouts in complete disbelief while 2 blindfolded royal guards stand silently behind her. She points an accusatory finger forward, demanding to know if it is truly possible that he broke off his long-standing engagement. Roland stands tall and solemn as the title card for Chapter 2 of the saga declares the Villainess became a single mother, while the furious woman asks if he ended things with Estelle. Maintaining a chillingly cold exterior, Roland flatly explains that Estelle was always deeply disrespectful toward him. The older woman furiously demands concrete proof of his wild accusations that Estelle relentlessly harassed Cecile out of pure jealousy. Roland averts his eyes and awkwardly rubs the back of his neck, visibly struggling to formulate a convincing response. His father furiously facepalms over his foolish son making Estelle his fiancée, while Roland fiercely defends himself by claiming the clever woman left no physical evidence but Cecile personally testified to the abuse. The furious patriarch orders Roland to bring the Baron's daughter at once so his mother can formally meet her, sarcastically assuring the boy that he isn't going to eat her. Sweating nervously, Roland tries to desperately stall when his commanding father declares he will take custody of Estelle and demands to know exactly where she is. Roland finally confesses that all contact was permanently lost after she went to a neighboring country, adding that she was subsequently disowned by Duke Leon. His elegant mother recoils in sheer, unadulterated horror, screaming at the top of her lungs to ask what he just said. The exhausted father furiously pinches the bridge of his nose, lamenting why he is surrounded by such absolute fools, even Leon. Realizing he absolutely cannot rely on his idiot son for anything, the weary father resolves to personally hear the matter out himself for the time being. The tense narrative shifts to a royal palace tea party later that same day, where the dramatic rumors continue to spread like wildfire among the elites. A dramatic Cecile cries fake tears to the other ladies, claiming that Lady Estelle is a villain who bullied her, plotted her kidnapping, and maliciously broke her mother's keepsake flowerpot. An elegant older woman sighs deeply into her fine porcelain teacup, brutally summarizing the disastrous situation by noting that an idiot chose an idiot. A royal investigator bows low in complete shame, offering his deepest apologies to his superiors because the missing Estelle has still not been found. He nervously promises his furious commander that his entire unit will continue to pour all available efforts into the ongoing search. Looking out over the sprawling kingdom, a shadowed figure mournfully whispers into the wind, begging to know where Estelle could possibly be hiding. The timeline jumps forward 6 full years into the future, landing squarely in the bustling, peaceful kingdom of Bruton. A set of heavy wooden tavern doors swings wide open as a bright, cheerful voice rings out to welcome a brand new patron. The bespectacled waitress, secretly hiding from her turbulent past, turns confidently from the wooden tavern bar to greet the unknown arrival. A waitress in a dark apron happily welcomes a customer into the establishment with a bright, warm smile. The handsome young man politely introduces himself to her as Frederick. Following their initial meeting, he starts coming to the shop frequently to enjoy their meals. The twin girls enthusiastically greet Frederick at the door, cheerfully declaring that he looks incredibly handsome again today. Emma approaches the seated noble and playful asks if he is just more fresh meat joining the superficial crowd of regulars who only come to see her. Frederick quietly closes his eyes and smiles in mild amusement at her blunt accusation. Taking a slow sip from his cup, he openly admits he cannot deny her popularity, leaving a confused Emma to ask what he is talking about. The bespectacled waitress covers her mouth in sheer bewilderment, quietly repeating the word popular to herself. Misunderstanding his compliment entirely, she strikes a proud pose and boldly declares complete confidence in her physical strength. A heavily blushing Frederick stammers a quick apology and awkwardly gestures to hand her back the shop's menu. He formally orders the chawanmushi and agedashi tofu, which Emma cheerfully promises to bring right away. Before she can walk off, Frederick nervously calls out Emma's name to ask her a quick question. Glancing back, she listens as he curiously asks if she makes the unusual tofu ingredient right here in the shop. Emma smiles brightly and confirms that she and Matt make the tofu together every single morning. Frederick remarks that the two of them must be close, prompting a confused Emma to wonder what he means by together. The waitress thoughtfully glances over her shoulder before walking away through the swinging wooden doors. A close-up reveals Emma's guarded expression as her sharp eyes narrow with deep, lingering suspicion. Observing the solitary man drinking from his mug, Emma silently wonders why a wealthy noble is eating at her humble shop instead of enjoying extravagant meals at his grand mansion. She leans cautiously against the wooden wall, her mind racing as she considers another glaring piece of the puzzle. Watching Frederick sit warmly with the smiling twins, Emma nervously acknowledges his striking visual resemblance to Coco and Mia. Seeing the identical, joyful smiles shared between the noble and the little girl weighs heavily on her anxious mind. She desperately tries to dismiss the terrifying thought, frantically telling herself that the resemblance must be nothing more than her wild imagination. Carrying a wooden bucket through the doorway, Emma admits she tried her best to ignore the glaring truth staring her in the face. A few months after he first started visiting the shop, Frederick urgently asks Emma for a private moment. Placing a solemn hand over his chest, he apologizes sincerely if his sudden confession comes as a terrible shock. Standing tall in the open breeze, Frederick looks Emma directly in the eye and plainly states his belief that Coco and Mia are his sisters. Emma's eyes widen in absolute silence as the dreadful confirmation finally shatters her fragile wall of denial. A bright full moon hangs ominously in the night sky as Emma mentally accepts that she knew this fateful day would eventually come. The heavy silence settles over the quiet, moonlit exterior of the Grand Manor building. Frederick gently pleads for her to listen as he prepares to explain the complicated family truth. Taking a steadying breath, the young nobleman clarifies that the twin girls are actually his half-sisters. His sharp eyes narrow slightly as he carefully watches Emma's calm reaction to the startling secret. When he asks why she isn't surprised, Emma solemnly admits she had a gut feeling from the very first time she laid eyes on him. She confesses that his facial features looked so incredibly similar to the children that she immediately suspected their hidden connection. Acknowledging her sharp intuition, Frederick requests to formally confirm her exact relationship to a specific woman. He holds his breath and asks her directly about her mysterious connection to Monica Garnier. Emma reveals she is Monica's younger sister, sadly beginning to explain what happened right after Monica gave birth to Coco and Mia. A single, heavy tear gathers silently in the corner of Emma's deeply mournful eye. The tear finally breaks free, sliding slowly down her cheek as the painful memory fully resurfaces. Standing stiffly beside his table, Emma bluntly tells the somber nobleman that her beloved sister passed away. Frederick flinches violently in his chair, visibly struck by the tragic confirmation of Monica's untimely death. He quickly apologizes for forcing her to recall such painful memories, but Emma gently reassures him that it is not his fault. Frederick covers his mouth with a trembling hand, quietly noting that the two sisters must have been incredibly close. Emma fondly remembers her late sister as the absolute most trustworthy person in the entire world. Stepping forward to finally reveal his own full identity, the young man officially introduces himself as Frederick Lafayette. He drops a massive bombshell on the confused waitress, announcing that he is a ruling duke of the Valier kingdom. Emma stares back in complete and utter bewilderment, repeating the prestigious title of Duke Lafayette. She stammers that the duke was supposed to be a much older man, prompting Frederick to sadly explain that his father recently passed away and he just inherited the title. An exposition reveals that Frederick's father raised him alone with extreme, worrying affection after his mother passed away when he was just an infant. As the late-born, precious only son, Frederick was heavily sheltered and strictly educated by private tutors instead of ever being sent away to a normal school. A somber narrative reveals that the young Frederick was raised in strict isolation, kept completely sheltered from the outside world. He solemnly explains that on his deathbed, his sickly father suddenly confessed to having another child. Frederick recounts his father's deep regret over falsely accusing Monica Garnier of infidelity, foolishly believing an old man like himself could not possibly father a child. He bitterly admits his father should have known better, as the earnest woman was never the type to lie for money. A dark shadow falls over the memory as Frederick reveals she vanished shortly after the terrible confrontation. He firmly believes his father was an absolute fool for driving her away. Clarifying his stance, the young duke insists he is not trying to defend his father's actions, though the old man deeply regretted his grave mistake. Emma lowers her gaze, softly agreeing that Monica was an incredibly honest woman. She fondly remembers her late sister as the most earnest person she ever knew. Frederick listens in respectful silence, his handsome features softening with quiet understanding. He explains that his father immediately launched a search for Monica, but was severely limited because he had never publicly acknowledged his commoner lover. Emma tightly grips her coffee mug, expressing quiet relief at finally knowing the true identity of the twins' blood relatives. Anxious about her own fate, Emma silently wonders what will happen to her now that Frederick has taken over the search. Frederick reveals he scoured the land for his father's posthumous children until a rumor surfaced about a restaurant housing kids with highly unusual hair colors. He thoroughly investigated the surrounding area and the kingdom of Bruton before finally tracking them down to this very town. Discovering that a proprietress named Emma Garnier was raising the twins instead of Monica, he decided to frequent the restaurant to secretly judge her character. Emma's eyes widen in sudden realization as all of his strange, observant behavior finally makes perfect sense. Frederick warmly praises her unwavering dedication, noting how she always greets every customer with a bright smile regardless of their social standing. He expresses genuine admiration for the meticulous care she takes to ensure her patrons dine in absolute comfort. A thoroughly confused Emma tilts her head, genuinely asking if such basic hospitality isn't just a matter of course. The noble shakes his head, insisting that running a business while raising children is incredibly difficult, and commends her excellent treatment of both the twins and her employees. Frederick looks at her with deep respect, declaring her a wonderful mother for raising Coco and Mia into such kind, upstanding girls. A single, overwhelming tear escapes Emma's eye as the sheer weight of his validation crashes over her. Covering her face, she breaks down crying and asks her late sister if she is finally doing a good job as a mother. The heartfelt moment abruptly shatters when Frederick firmly states that Coco and Mia must come to his house, as he cannot abandon members of his ducal family. Emma freezes in sheer terror, the devastating words paralyzing her in place. Leaping from her chair in a desperate panic, the terrified waitress screams at him not to take her precious girls away. A highly flustered Frederick throws his hands up, frantically begging her to calm down and insisting she has completely misunderstood his intentions. The wooden door slowly creaks open as a sleepy Coco and Mia step into the room, rubbing their tired eyes to ask what happened. The twins immediately notice their mother's tears, their sleepy expressions instantly shifting into protective glares directed at the noble. Standing fiercely in front of Emma, the angry girls declare that they absolutely hate anyone who makes their mother cry, no matter how handsome he is. Sweating nervously under their intense hostility, Frederick desperately begs the protective children not to misunderstand the situation. He quickly clarifies that he has absolutely no intention of ever separating them from their beloved mother. Emma blinks through her lingering tears, her voice trembling slightly as she asks if he is truly telling the truth. The young Duke offers a reassuring smile and firmly promises that he will not tear their family apart. Safe and reassured, the exhausted twins fall fast asleep together under the warm blankets. Since the late dukes will granted the twins' inheritance rights, Emma agreed to temporarily stay at the ducal mansion solely to complete the necessary legal procedures for their future. The loyal tavern employees confidently beat their chests, happily promising to protect the shop while she is away. 1 week later, an elegant horse-drawn carriage finally arrives at the sprawling Lafayette estate. The heavy iron gates of the Grand Manor swing open to welcome the returning lord and his new guests. The majestic carriage slowly rolls across the pristine cobblestone courtyard of the noble residence. Twin doors open to reveal a breathtaking, chandelier-lit entrance hall lined with perfectly positioned servants. Staring up at the sheer scale of the massive architecture, an overwhelmed voice completely mistakes the extravagant mansion for a royal castle. Emma stares in total disbelief, heavily admitting she never imagined the estate would be this obscenely grand even in the royal capital. Small, hesitant feet step carefully down from the secure safety of the carriage. Coco and Mia nervously peek their heads out to inspect their intimidating new surroundings. Recovering her composure, Emma steps forward to politely thank the household for such a remarkably warm welcome. A row of uniformed maids gasp loudly, their faces lighting up with uncontrollable excitement. The ecstatic servants squeal in absolute delight over the lovely, well-mannered girls, noting with joy that they look exactly like the master did when he was a young boy. An older butler and a senior maid watch the chaotic celebration with mild, endearing surprise. Admiring onlookers gasp at the sight of a beautiful woman, captivated by her ability to carry herself with such elegance. Whispering among themselves, they wonder if the graceful woman is a nobleman's daughter, noting the presence of her companions Coco, Mia, and Emma. Startled by the sudden attention, Emma glances upward with a look of mild surprise behind her spectacles. A welcoming hand extends toward her, gesturing for her to step forward into her new life. The grand entrance of the Lafayette home looms ahead, opening its doors to receive the new arrivals. A row of uniformed maids stands in stunned silence, their jaws dropping in unison at the unfolding scene. Overwhelmed by the sight, the maids whisper that seeing a smile from their master is a truly rare occurrence. Brushing off the butler's reminder to wait inside, the master insists he simply couldn't wait any longer to greet them. Presenting the head butler, Philippe, the master introduces him to Lady Emma, Lady Coco, and Lady Mia as a vital pillar of the household. Stepping forward with profound respect, Philippe warmly awaits their arrival from the very bottom of his heart. Emma marvels at her luxurious new room, where the master reveals he has already prepared clothes for her inside the closet. Coco and Mia's eyes sparkle with absolute joy as the master generously encourages them to feel free to wear the beautiful dresses. Gesturing to the opulent surroundings, he warmly invites his guests to please make themselves entirely at home. Overjoyed by their grand new environment, Coco and Mia excitedly explore the expansive, sunlit room. Bounding across the floor, the two girls leap onto the fluffy bed with delighted squeals. Emma firmly orders them to wait, ignoring their disappointed groans as they press against the balcony glass. Pausing mid-thought, a sudden realization flashes across Emma's bespectacled eyes. One of the girls asks if Mama brought the rose bush, admitting it feels lonely without it even though Sally is watering it. Hoping for a solution, they wonder aloud if they could ask Frederick to have the plant brought over because they miss it. Agreeing they can ask him later, Emma cheerfully instructs the girls to finish unpacking their things first. Monica affectionately praises the adorable children, noting with a bright smile that they are growing up wonderfully. Reflecting on her past life, Emma acknowledges that while things didn't happen as wished, her impossible dream of becoming a mother finally came true. Closing her eyes with deep emotion, she silently expresses how truly grateful she is for this miraculous second chance. Pulling Coco and Mia into a fierce embrace, she vows to do her absolute best for their sake. Holding them tightly against her chest, she dedicates herself entirely to the happiness of these children and to Estelle's sake. Daphne, a maid of the Lafayette ducal household, clasps her hands in pure delight as she calls the moment wonderful. Radiating excitement, Daphne confidently assures Emma that the master will surely be captivated. Emma graciously accepts the compliments, thanking them for allowing her to be dressed in such beauty. Looking breathtaking, Emma wears a stunning, low-cut white gown paired with a massive jeweled pendant. While her daughters cheer yay over Frederick's gifts, a flustered Emma panics that the dress neckline is cut way too low. Blushing fiercely, she nervously clutches the fabric of her bodice to cover her exposed chest. Staring into the expansive closet, she realizes that calling this massive collection of dresses a mere gift is a vast understatement. A beautifully ornate jewelry box sits open, overflowing with glittering pearls and flawless diamonds. Sighing heavily, Emma admits she can't accept such luxury items, but knows taking them off now would be incredibly rude. Examining her stunning reflection in the tall mirror, she lightly touches her cheek in complete disbelief. A gentle, confident smile finally graces her lips as she fully embraces her breathtaking transformation. Standing proudly beside her, Coco and Mia beam with sheer joy at their mother's radiant appearance. Revealing how restlessly the master paced the library all morning, Daphne explains he has been eagerly waiting for Lady Emma's arrival. Catching her off guard, Daphne enthusiastically praises Lady Emma for having such incredibly refined speech. Sweating nervously after nearly giving herself away, Emma quickly claims she developed her speech while working at a noble's manor. Hearing that the master was impatiently pacing all over the mansion just for her leaves Emma completely bewildered. Daphne bluntly clarifies that his anxious anticipation was entirely focused on Emma, not Coco and Mia. Giggling into her hands, the maid finds the master's obvious romantic desperation incredibly amusing. Observing the situation, Emma bluntly realizes that the children are being completely ignored in this dynamic. The grand exterior of the Lafayette estate stands tall, its majestic architecture gleaming beneath the clouds. Approaching the dining table, Frederick formally excuses himself while Emma thanks him for the generous invitation. Flashing a brilliant, charming smile, Frederick happily declares that he has been waiting for her. Gesturing warmly to the grand dining hall, he firmly assures Emma that this mansion is her home now. Staring up at him in awe, Emma is completely captivated by his sincere declaration and striking presence. Startled by her breathtaking appearance, Frederick blushes furiously and aggressively covers his face to hide his intense embarrassment. Blushing fiercely, Frederick admits he couldn't help but get nervous because she looks so incredibly beautiful. Shocked by the compliment, Emma frantically wonders if her elegant new outfit is truly too immodest. Gazing at her with absolute adoration, he declares that while she is always lovely, today she is especially enchanting. Frederick insists that any man alive would find it completely impossible to look away from her radiant beauty. Startled by the sudden romantic tension, the background maids drop a silver tray and gasp in horror as it shatters. Dropping to their knees in a blind panic, the flustered maids bow their heads and scream their deepest apologies. Smiling warmly, Emma graciously thanks Lord Frederick and playfully notes that he is exceptionally skilled at flattering women. Laughing softly at her teasing, Frederick rubs his cheek with a wonderfully sheepish and charming smile. Stepping forward with crisp, perfectly polished shoes, the head butler Philippe calmly interrupts the moment to address Lady Emma. Philippe formally urges her to accept Frederick's feelings, calling it an absolute miracle since it is the very first time he has ever seen the master genuinely praise a woman. Completely flustered by his butler's blunt honesty, Frederick waves his hands frantically and begs Emma to forgive him while insisting he is truly honored. Emma simply closes her eyes and smiles with profound gentleness, softly reassuring him that it is perfectly all right. Her breathtaking smile completely lights up the room, casting an ethereal and captivating aura around her elegant figure. Struck entirely speechless, Frederick gasps sharply as an unfamiliar, piercing emotion suddenly grips his chest. Clutching his tailored coat, he stares at her in wide-eyed shock and frantically wonders if this overwhelming sensation is the legendary feeling of falling in love. He feels his heart racing wildly against his ribs, unable to tear his mesmerized gaze away from her. Frederick lowers his head slightly, his glasses glinting as he tries to process the sudden, intense romantic impact. Sweating nervously, the utterly bewildered Duke seriously questions if he might actually be feeling physically unwell. Sometime later, Emma reflects that the inheritance meeting was postponed, so Frederick thoughtfully suggested Coco and Mia receive private tutors in the meantime. Watching the girls joyfully practice martial training alongside their academics, Emma expresses immense gladness that they are staying active and spending each day so happily. A maid informs Emma that her potted plant has safely arrived, prompting Emma to deeply thank Frederick for taking such good care of them alongside organizing the tutors. The beaming maid insists it is a great honor, revealing that all the servants absolutely adore them and secretly hope they stay at the estate forever. Leaning casually against the balcony pillar, Frederick suddenly reveals that every single one of the hired tutors was utterly astonished by Coco and Mia. Startled by this unexpected praise, Emma listens intently as Frederick explains the educators had never seen such incredibly talented children. He notes their flawless manners are fit for the royal court, which is highly suspicious since commoner children are rarely educated this thoroughly in high society. Flashing bright peace signs, Coco and Mia proudly declare to the Duke that they learned absolutely everything from their wonderful mama. Turning a sharp, penetrating gaze toward Emma, Frederick directly demands to know where she managed to acquire such extensive, elite knowledge. Feeling the dangerous sting of his question, Emma nervously lies that she simply enjoys studying and taught herself by imitating the nobles while working as a lowly servant. Heavy drops of sweat roll down Emma's face as she waits in agonizing suspense to see if he will buy her desperate excuse. Frederick narrows his eyes thoughtfully, silently analyzing her highly improbable claim of being a mere self-taught servant girl. On the ominous day of the inheritance, Daphne pulls Lady Emma aside and solemnly begs her to please be incredibly careful. Walking through the grand estate, Daphne warns that many of the master's greedy relatives are furious about the vast inheritance going to Coco and Mia. Emma sincerely thanks Daphne for the critical warning, her eyes hardening with fierce, unwavering protective resolve for her vulnerable daughters. Meanwhile, scheming nobles whisper treacherously about Crown Prince Roland being disinherited and fleeing alongside his fiancée, Lady Cecile. The plotting aristocrats eagerly wonder if their ducal house should ruthlessly seize this chaotic political chance to serve Her Majesty the Queen. They sneer in wicked agreement, the sharp clicks of their polished shoes echoing ominously against the cold marble floor. Frederick glares viciously from the shadows, his sharp eyes tracking the treasonous whispers circulating among his power-hungry family members. Entering the grand meeting hall, Emma and the girls freeze as they are instantly subjected to the furious, judging glares of the seated relatives. Swallowing nervously, Emma realizes Daphne was absolutely right about the suffocating, hostile tension poisoning the atmosphere. Desperate to shield her daughters from the venomous crowd, Emma politely asks the butler to watch the children in another room, which he immediately accepts. Frederick stands up with terrifying authority, his sheer commanding presence instantly silencing the arrogant murmurs across the sprawling room. Taking his rightful seat at the head of the heavy wooden table, Frederick prepares his documents while Emma bravely sits across from the hostile assembly. A confident, highly predatory smile ghosts across Frederick's handsome face as he silently dares his treacherous relatives to make a move. One furious relative violently breaks the silence, accusing the gold-digging woman of cowardly hiding behind the children to steal their wealth. Another noble furiously demands respect, sparking massive outrage by reminding the table that these children undeniably carry the late Duke's royal blood. Sneering with absolute disgust, an angry relative demands to know who would ever be foolish enough to believe the lies of a low-born commoner. Shouting over the rising chaos, the noble violently demands proof of lineage, refusing to accept her simply because of the Duke's personal invitation. Just as the relative screams about handing vast wealth to mere children, Frederick violently slams his hand on the table and roars that they have said enough. Frederick's eyes narrow into a lethal, terrifyingly cold glare that instantly freezes the blood of every single aristocrat in the room. Standing tall, Frederick roars that he personally confirmed her story using his father's words, warning that anyone who doubts her is officially defying the head of the Lafayette house. The hostile relatives sweat and grimace in absolute terror at his crushing authority, completely silenced as Frederick firmly anchors Lady Emma's untouchable status. Despite the harsh insults thrown her way, the woman answered calmly, showcasing the true dignity of nobility. Her serene composure demonstrates a level of grace that far surpasses anyone else present in the grand room. The atmosphere immediately shifts as a man prepares to read his father's will, prompting a shocked gasp regarding a common woman. Reading from the document, Frederick reveals that the majority of the estate passes to him, with a portion for the late Duke's twin daughters and the rest distributed at his own discretion. Seeking validation for his sweeping authority, Frederick directly questions the legal counselor about the accuracy of these terms. The counselor firmly confirms his role in drafting the will, reiterating that the late Duke explicitly entrusted the entire division of the inheritance to Lord Frederick's judgment. Drawing the ultimate conclusion from the counselor's testimony, Frederick prepares to deliver his final, crushing verdict to the greedy family members. Staring them down with unyielding authority, Frederick declares that he alone decides exactly how and to whom the vast inheritance will be distributed. A sharply dressed man recoils in sheer, trembling horror as the devastating reality of his immediate financial ruin sets in. Shock waves ripple across the table as the assembled relatives freeze in absolute panic at their sudden disinheritance. Delivering the final blow, Frederick ruthlessly informs the indicated family members that they will receive absolutely nothing and orders them to leave the premises immediately. Panicking and backpedaling desperately, the disinherited relatives plead that they would never oppose Lord Frederick and claim it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Frantically trying to save themselves from ruin, they beg someone to speak up, questioning if they truly said anything that offensive. A spectacled woman smiles knowingly, entirely unfazed by the pathetic, groveling desperation of the ousted nobility. Refusing to offer them any salvation, she casually states she has nothing to add and fully supports His Grace's harsh decree. The defeated relatives angrily click their tongues and trudge out of the grand hall in bitter, undeniable disgrace. With the room finally cleared of pests, Frederick politely apologizes for the disturbance and refocuses the discussion on the true matter at hand. The bespectacled woman peers closely at the documents, completely staggered by the vast sums of wealth allocated directly for the children. Acknowledging her disbelief, Frederick praises the legacy of the Lafayette house, noting how the late Duke always prioritized his people's needs. He elaborates that the Duke placed his subjects above his own personal comfort, earning their deep love and allowing the land to flourish beautifully. Drawing a bitter comparison, he notes that the Leon Dukes selfishly raised taxes solely to fund their own indulgent lifestyles. The woman named Emma holds her head in profound distress, admitting that merely remembering those dark times gives her a severe headache. Frederick offers his sincere apologies for the immense suffering she was forced to go through in the past. The sudden sound of echoing footsteps interrupts their somber reflection as an unexpected guest approaches the room. Looking up with a gentle smile, Frederick announces that there is someone highly important he would like her to meet. Startled by the sudden introduction, Emma turns her attention toward the newcomer while Frederick politely asks if the arrangement is all right. Frederick introduces the arrival as Count Joseph de Maistre, praising him as a truly brilliant jurist, which elicits a shocked gasp from Emma. As Frederick reveals his intention to appoint the Count as the children's legal guardian, Emma enters a state of internal panic, realizing how bad this situation truly is. Peering through her glasses with wide-eyed shock, Emma stammers that he startled her, barely able to process the identity of the man standing before her. She is completely overwhelmed by the startling revelation that Count Joseph is the absolute spitting image of a figure from her past. Emma realizes with rising dread that this man is the spitting image of her first love and that he personally knows Estelle, predicting a massive commotion. The narrative aggressively shifts back 8 years in time, plunging into a vivid flashback of Joseph's intense youth. A young, sharply dressed Joseph is flatly told by a peer that he is far too serious for his own good. Entering Chapter 4's timeline, a fiercely stern Joseph orders his classmates to improve themselves, warning that their academic neglect hurts everyone else. An arrogant student immediately threatens Joseph with a good punch, telling him to shut up and stop acting like hot stuff just because he can study. Before the violent heir of House Edgrants can throw a punch, the elegant Lady Estelle smoothly intervenes, reminding him of his recent engagement. The aggressive student instantly backs down with a panicked apology the moment he recognizes the stunning daughter of the Duke of Leon. Estelle stands composed and graceful before the humbled aggressor while a silent, observant Joseph watches the scene unfold from the sidelines. Framed by beautiful blossoms, Estelle casts a warm, incredibly radiant smile that silently captivates everyone standing around her. A young Joseph stands absolutely speechless, his previously stern demeanor melting away as he stares intently at her natural grace. He watches in quiet awe as Estelle's elegant figure turns and peacefully walks away through the bright, sunlit courtyard. Behind his glasses, Joseph's stoic expression softens into a look of profound, lingering admiration for the noble girl who effortlessly saved him. Snapping back to the present reality, a slightly flustered Joseph brushes his hair and humbly excuses his momentary lapse in concentration. Recovering his composure, Joseph explains that back in their academy days, he shared a class with the strikingly beautiful Lady Estelle de Leon. He passionately elaborates that she was far more than just a pretty face, describing her as incredibly strong, intelligent, and fiercely resilient. He recalls how she was a woman overflowing with genuine compassion, always willing to help someone in need even when it was highly inconvenient for her. Looking out fondly at the memory, Joseph admits that she even helped him once, forever cementing her as the untouchable target of his deep admiration. A lingering, wistful silence fills the room as Joseph quietly reflects on the profound impact Estelle had on his formative years. Standing confidently beside Frederick, Joseph openly confesses that the brilliant Lady Estelle of Lynn must have undoubtedly been his very first love. A somber look crosses his handsome face as he solemnly references the tragic moment when the Crown Prince completely annulled their high-profile engagement. Hearing that she remarkably resembles a certain duke's striking red-haired daughter, Lady Emma maintains a polite facade. She gently brushes off the comparison by noting that her own eyes and hair are completely different. Behind her strained smile, Emma internally panics as she realizes Count Joseph's terrifyingly sharp intuition might expose her. Desperately gripping her dress, she frantically tries to figure out how to talk her way out of this dangerous situation. Observing the tense exchange, Frederick silently watches Emma's subtle reactions with a quiet, contemplative gaze. His sharp eyes narrow slightly, carefully scrutinizing the nervous woman standing before him for any hidden tells. Recovering her composure, Emma formally introduces herself as Lady Garnier, the mother of Coco and Mia, claiming she is merely the younger sister of their late mother, Monica. The men accept this explanation, reasoning that her uncanny resemblance to the Duke's daughter must be a mere coincidence. Standing tall with his arms firmly crossed, Count Joseph observes the conversation with an unreadable, stoic expression. Breaking the tension, Joseph lightly dismisses the impossible idea that the noble Lady Estelle would be here, prompting Frederick's agreeable nod. Exhaling a silent breath of relief, Emma secretly rejoices that she successfully dodged their dangerous suspicions. The heavy doors suddenly burst open as a loud, cheerful cry for their mother echoes through the grand room. Little Coco and Mia rush into the room, their faces etched with deep concern as they frantically ask if anyone was being mean to her. Clenching her tiny fists with fierce determination, one of the girls bravely declares that she will never forgive anyone who dares to be nasty to their mother. Hearing her daughter's fierce loyalty, Emma's anxious expression completely melts away into a look of profound, tender warmth. Kneeling down to comfort them, Emma sweetly assures the girls that she is perfectly fine because they are always there to protect her. Towering silently in the background, Count Joseph and Frederick watch the touching familial reunion with softened, respectful expressions. Noticing the men staring, Emma cautiously asks if something is wrong, prompting a slightly flustered denial from Joseph. She then turns back to her beloved daughters to formally introduce their prestigious new guests. Gesturing toward the tall jurist, Emma explains that Joseph will be the one responsibly managing the inheritance money they are set to receive. The little girl's eyes sparkle with absolute joy upon hearing about the money, immediately wondering if they can finally buy their mother a beautiful new dress. Innocently exposing their frugal lifestyle, the children reveal that even when Emma's dresses rip, she simply sews them back up to wear again. As the girls loudly broadcast that her patched dresses are a sacrifice for their future and the reason she lacks a husband, a mortified Emma desperately wishes the ground would swallow her. Blushing furiously at their brutally honest chatter, she silently screams that this situation has become far too embarrassing to endure. The girls proudly conclude their innocent rant by declaring their mother looks absolutely amazing when dressed up, drawing an amused smile from Frederick. Breaking his usual serious demeanor, Count Joseph lets out a booming, hearty laugh at the children's charming honesty. Flustered by the unexpected joy, a blushing Frederick stammers slightly while trying to maintain his noble composure. Deeply moved by the display, Frederick gently commends Lady Emma for being such a truly wonderful and selfless mother to the girls. Overwhelmed by the unexpected praise, Emma buries her burning face in her hands to hide her immense embarrassment. Leaning in closer, Frederick softly adds that she is also a deeply beautiful woman, leaving the compliment lingering in the warm air. Watching the heartwarming interaction unfold, Joseph offers a rare, genuinely tender smile from behind his glasses. However, Frederick's momentary amusement quickly fades, replaced once again by the solemn, heavy weight of his noble duties. Standing quietly together, Emma and Frederick watch Count Joseph's imposing figure stride purposefully down the grand, sunlit hallway. Gripping his hand thoughtfully, Frederick silently questions if he made a critical mistake in choosing Joseph for this sensitive task. Turning his attention back to his companion, Frederick plainly asks Emma for her honest assessment of Count Joseph. Emma confidently expresses her deep trust in Joseph, praising his serious nature as the perfect shield to protect Coco and Mia's future. Pleased by her approval, Frederick agrees that Joseph has always been an exceptionally capable man driven by an unshakable sense of justice. With a slight, playful smirk, Frederick casually reveals that the stern jurist is actually incredibly popular among women. Emma blinks in genuine surprise, tilting her head as she tries to process this unexpected piece of gossip. Recovering quickly, Emma politely concedes that Joseph does appear to be both highly competent and undeniably charming. Frederick immediately seizes upon her words with a knowing look, teasingly asking if she truly believes that. Leaning into her curiosity, Emma hesitantly asks if the highly sought-after Count is still currently unmarried. Frederick quickly flips the question, sharply asking if Joseph's marital status is something that genuinely interests her. Seeing his sudden intensity, Emma flinches slightly, frantically wondering if she accidentally said something wrong to upset him. Before the awkward tension can fully settle, Frederick cuts through the silence by noting there is another pressing matter. Referencing an unspoken issue from earlier, Frederick fixes her with a deadly serious glare and requests a strictly private conversation. Emma's breath catches in her throat as the heavy implication of his words finally registers, her glasses glinting under the dim light. The narrative shifts away from the bright afternoon, plunging into the heavy, secretive shadows of that fateful night. Sitting rigidly in a dimly lit private parlor, Emma nervously addresses Lord Frederick as he stares solemnly out the grand window. The oppressive silence of the room stretches on for agonizingly long moments, thick with unspoken accusations and dangerous secrets. Finally breaking the unbearable tension, Frederick formally apologizes for deliberately keeping her waiting in the quiet room. With a heavy heart and downcast eyes, Emma quietly dismisses his apology, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation. Gripping her elegant teacup with trembling fingers, Emma weakly reiterates her defensive lie that she is simply Coco and Mia's kin. Pressing his advantage, Frederick coldly states that any hidden facts regarding the inheritance could drastically affect the children's future. Narrowing his eyes with predatory focus, Frederick prepares to tear down the fragile web of lies she has constructed. Sitting across from her trembling form, he drops all pretenses and demands that she tell him the absolute truth. Backed into a corner with her children's futures at stake, Emma swallows her immense fear and finally begins her fateful confession. Staring directly into his eyes, she sheds her false identity and definitively reveals herself as the long-lost Lady Estelle de Leon. Absorbing the staggering revelation, Frederick quietly acknowledges the truth as the dark, imposing silhouette of the estate looms outside. Frederick solemnly recounts the tragic history he knows, mentioning a devastating annulment and a forced exile to a cold, foreign land. Looking upon the ruined noblewoman with profound pity, Frederick softly murmurs that her life has truly been a cruel, unforgiving tale. Bowing her head in deep shame, Estelle sincerely apologizes for deceiving him and desperately begs that the innocent people at the inn be spared from any fallout. A blonde man begs to bear any punishment alone to spare a cast-out duke's daughter, but the woman gently assures him he bears no guilt. Sitting across from him at a small table, the woman expresses her profound relief that he is safe. Beside the window, a nervous, bespectacled woman named Monica politely stammers her thanks for the reassurance. The blonde man looks stunned before hesitantly asking if he might be allowed to remain at the sides of Coco and Mia. The bespectacled woman immediately validates his place, firmly stating of course he can stay since he is their irreplaceable mother. Even with her blessing, the blonde man crosses his arms and looks away, his expression heavy with lingering doubt. Another flamboyant man suddenly interjects that her former fiancé must have been entirely blind to cruelly break an engagement with such a remarkable woman, noting that the fiancé was drawn to someone else while the woman herself admits she never truly loved him. Glancing over his shoulder with a soft smile, the blonde man begins to confess that he finds this development rather unexpected. The bespectacled woman looks on calmly as the man finishes, declaring the broken engagement to be rather welcome news. Clutching his chest as his heart races too often lately, he admits to experiencing entirely unfamiliar, intense palpitations. Smiling serenely with his eyes closed, he explains he never had heart problems before this, marveling at how she gave her all to a fiancé she did not even love. Gazing intently at the bespectacled woman sitting diligently at her desk, he notes that such phenomenal effort and devotion are truly rare. Visibly moved, the woman reveals that no one has ever said such validating things to her, finally feeling that her hard work deserves to be acknowledged. Tears spilling from beneath her glasses, she emphasizes that absolutely no one had ever recognized her struggles until this very moment. Overcome with emotion, she tearfully tells Lord Frederick that he is far too skilled at making her cry. Staring down with a somber expression, Lord Frederick quietly replies that causing her tears was never his intent. Brushing her tears away, she softly murmurs that she simply wants to see him smile. Overwhelmed by her sincerity, Lord Frederick begins to respond but is cut off by the sheer weight of the moment. Beaming radiantly, the bespectacled woman starts to voice a heartfelt wish, though her words trail off into a warm, hopeful silence. A quiet, contemplative pause settles between them as the two stand completely still, absorbing the profound emotional shift. Startled out of the silence, a sudden shocked exclamation shatters the peaceful atmosphere. Acknowledging her brave facade, Lord Frederick gently offers his shoulder for her to lean on whenever she wishes, prompting her to confess that she feels much calmer now. Questioning if she has truly never had anyone to rely on, he listens as she admits her complete inability to trust or depend on others. Staring blankly ahead, she confirms she has never had such a supportive person in her life, though a lingering doubt makes her reconsider. Pivoting the deeply personal conversation, he boldly asks if she has ever truly experienced the feeling of being in love. Looking entirely detached, she truthfully admits she does not even understand what romantic love is, declaring that the only love that matters is her fierce devotion to Coco and Mia. Swearing to do absolutely anything within her power, she waits as he seriously notes that there is something specific he must ask of her. Looking out toward the imposing royal palace of Valier, the man asks if she knows of the current political turmoil, explaining that the Queen tried to mold Crown Prince Roland and his lover, Lady Cecile, into suitable rulers. Conceding that the royal training must have been incredibly difficult, he grimly reveals that the Queen's ambitious plan did not go well at all. Swinging a heavy sword in grueling conditions, the disgraced Prince Roland was ordered to serve as a common soldier on the harsh, unforgiving frontier. Meanwhile, struggling under the immense pressure of queenly training, Lady Cecile was sent to a convent but quickly gave up and cowardly fled. Prince Roland had endured all the agonizing frontier torments solely for Cecile's sake, but upon hearing of her selfish escape, his spirit broke completely. Left utterly speechless by the betrayal, Prince Roland deserted the army and remains missing to this day. Because Roland is the Queen's only son, Her Majesty made the drastic decision to disinherit him entirely and seeks to name a brand new crown prince or princess. The narrative abruptly shifts focus to the complex, tangled web of three powerful noble factions waiting in the wings to seize the sudden royal vacuum. In Valier, the royal family is deeply interwoven by blood with the three great dukedoms, Lafayette, Lyon, and Mirabeau, and historically, princes would be adopted to inherit a ducal house lacking a son. Consequently, Significant political pressure mounts as Lords Pascal and Daniel of House Leon are drawn into the dangerous royal succession crisis. Lord Frederick then reveals that he, as the Duke of Lafayette, was officially named alongside them as a prime candidate for the empty throne. Casting a dark, troubled shadow, he mentions his brothers and points out that his sudden candidacy is the truly strange part of this royal decree. The woman questions the bizarre logic of the situation, wondering why Lord Frederick would be considered when he has already inherited his prestigious title. Frederick explains a shocking rumor that an illegitimate child of his father has been found, prompting Her Majesty to brazenly declare that if this child inherits Lafayette, then Frederick is free to take the throne. Calling the entire plot outrageous, Frederick details the convoluted requirement that he must first be formally adopted by the Queen to even become crown prince. Clenching his resolve, Frederick firmly declares he will not cast aside the Lafayette name, wishing only to protect the beloved lands his father entrusted to him. Sitting stiffly on the sofa, he looks at his companion and unequivocally states that he absolutely does not wish to be crown prince. The bespectacled woman processes this heavy information, asking if House Mirabeau has two daughters who might complicate the succession further. Frederick confirms the elder Mirabeau daughter is set to inherit, while the Duke himself dismissed the younger daughter, Marion, as unfit due to her sheer dislike for studying. Noticing his subtle reaction, the woman astutely points out that Frederick seems quite familiar with Lady Marion. Sighing heavily as the woman smiles knowingly, Frederick admits the Duke of Mirabeau once forcefully pressed him for a match with Marion, leading to an unwilling meeting he truly detested. The woman leans forward on the grand sofa, a curious expression crossing her face as she prompts him to continue. Blushing slightly, Frederick confesses he feels a little relieved by the situation since he currently has neither a fiancé nor a lover for the impending succession review. A woman expresses surprise that Lord Frederick has no lover, noting that she has been ordered to appear at court with a companion or betrothed. Staring softly ahead, Lord Frederick admits that his world has always been small. The bespectacled woman finds it hard to believe someone so admirable has never had a lover, prompting Frederick to embarrassingly confess his complete lack of romantic encounters or interest in arranged matches. Frederick boldly asks her to accompany him to the palace as his fiancée before the Queen, causing her to scream in utter shock. Eyes spinning with panic, she loudly insists the request is impossible because she is not fit to stand at his side. Frederick just laughs and calls her adorable, while she flusters and begs him not to tease her. When asked his age, Frederick calmly states he is 18, causing the 24-year-old woman to recoil in horror at the age gap. A crushing wave of reality hits her as she agonizes over being a 24-year-old exiled and disowned former noblewoman. Frederick explains that if he appears at the palace alone, Her Majesty will ruthlessly bury him under endless marriage proposals. Resting his chin thoughtfully, he adds that the Duke of Mirabeau will only redouble his political pressure unless he brings a companion. Looking at her intently, he reiterates his strong desire to avoid becoming the crown prince entirely. Realization dawns in the woman's eyes as she begins to understand his true strategy. She pieces together that he specifically wants someone utterly unsuitable to play the role of a crown princess. Volunteering herself as the perfect unsuitable candidate to thwart the royal succession, she misses Frederick's quiet dismay as he begs her not to misunderstand him. While she lists her age and commoner status as perfect disqualifiers for a queen, Frederick dismisses such prejudices, declaring his respect for her wisdom and refinement regardless of rank. He tenderly affirms that to him, she is someone he is incredibly proud of. The woman looks down quietly, overwhelmed by his genuine and unexpected praise. Highlighting her worn appearance, she points out that even her hands are rough and scarred from hard labor. Without a word of hesitation, Frederick reaches out and gently takes her calloused hand in his. He softly declares that her rough hands are beautiful proof of just how hard she has fought to survive. Pressing her hand to his cheek, he closes his eyes and calls her worn hands beloved. Blushing furiously, she violently flinches back and awkwardly stammers as her heart races. Estelle frantically worries about staining House Lafayette and being recognized by the Queen, but Frederick just laughs and finds her scolding strangely refreshing. She exasperatedly points out that her brothers and the Queen know her well, emphasizing the immense risk of this plan. Her fear of being dragged back by House Leon is immediately shattered when Frederick fiercely vows he will never hand her over to them. Gripping her hand firmly, he promises to protect both her and the children, leaving her stunned and softly asking if he truly means it. Frederick assures her that she will always be able to stay safely with Coco and Mia under his steadfast protection. He explains that the sheer weight of being his betrothed will form a political shield, making it impossible for Duke Leon to touch her. Estelle grimly realizes her family would only reclaim her to profit by selling her off into another political marriage. Clasping her hands tighter, Frederick definitively declares that their arrangement is settled. Estelle completely panics when Frederick enthusiastically announces they must show the court just how deeply in love they are. Radiating sparkling confidence, Frederick instantly formally introduces himself as her lover, while Estelle realizes the situation has spiraled completely out of hand. The romantic tension is abruptly broken by a small, inquisitive voice interrupting them. Estelle is suddenly sitting sideways on Frederick's lap, looking utterly bewildered as she questions what he is doing. Coco and Mia eagerly run over, completely fascinated by their mother sitting so intimately on Frederick's lap. Frederick smoothly claims it is just practice to get used to their new roles, leaning into the performance. Peeking out from behind his shoulder, Estelle practically begs the girls to give them a moment alone. The two little girls merely gasp in unison, their eyes sparkling with absolute delight at the romantic scene. Estelle desperately tries to defuse the situation, terrified that her own daughters are misunderstanding the nature of their relationship. Frederick casually whispers into her ear that it is much better not to tell children about complex adult matters. The girls cheer happily about love while Estelle screams in embarrassment, deeply flustered by Frederick's smooth teasing. To make matters worse, one of the girls innocently relays a very suggestive piece of advice, leaving Estelle completely mortified. Having delivered their chaotic commentary, Coco and Mia gleefully run out of the room, shutting the heavy doors behind them. Left alone in the quiet room, Frederick covers his mouth as his shoulders begin to shake with suppressed amusement. Estelle points out his constant laughter, surprising Frederick, who admits he was always told he had a permanently blank expression. The mood instantly shifts as he looks warmly at her, implying his smiles are reserved entirely for her. Staring deeply into her eyes, he confesses that simply waking up and wondering what face she will make has brought true joy to his life. Caught completely off guard by his sudden vulnerability, Estelle can only part her lips in a soft gasp. Still trapped on his lap, her face burns bright red as she yells about how incredibly embarrassed she is to be so close to a higher authority. Frederick feigns innocent confusion about the higher authority comment, reminding the flustered Estelle that this lap-sitting is all just vital practice for their grand deception. Murmuring her sudden understanding, the flustered girl tries to process the bizarre situation unfolding before her. Looming over her with an intense gaze, Frederick suddenly issues a strange command for her to put her hand behind her neck. Startled by the unexpected proximity, she stammers a nervous excuse while questioning his completely bizarre demand. Without waiting for a proper response, he swiftly moves his arm to pull her closer into his personal space. Frederick abruptly wraps his arms around her in a sudden, tight embrace as floral imagery blooms brilliantly in the background to signify a romantic shift. She peers nervously over his broad shoulder, her eyes wide behind her spectacles in absolute and utter shock. Panicking internally, she wonders how long this intense contact will last, estimating that it takes at least 5 agonizingly long minutes. Overwhelmed by the sensory overload, she lets out a startled gasp as her blush deepens significantly. Left completely speechless and struggling to stand, she finds that absolutely no words are needed for this intimate moment. Her face flushes a deep shade of crimson as the overwhelming reality of their sudden embrace fully sets in. Observing her bashful and flustered reaction, a voice affectionately notes how remarkably cute she looks. Their faces draw agonizingly close together, the romantic tension thick enough to cut with a knife as he leans in. Trembling with nervous anticipation, she mentally stutters, desperately wondering if he is actually about to kiss her. Instead of claiming her lips, Frederick gently presses a sweet, lingering kiss against her flushed cheek. Pulling away gently, the two share a breathless, lingering gaze as the intense romantic tension finally breaks. Flashing a warm and disarming smile, Frederick notices her completely dazed state and politely asks what is wrong with her. Completely frozen in disbelief, she presses a trembling hand against her burning cheek while staring blankly ahead. She struggles to process the sudden show of affection, utterly bewildered that something like this just happened. Screaming internally with embarrassment, she finds the entire sweet ordeal absolutely unbelievable. Later, contemplating the approaching Crown Prince examination, she heavily debates whether to reveal her true identity at the royal palace. resting thoughtfully on the sofa, Frederick agrees that it would be much safer for her to go disguised as Emma Garnier rather than Estelle. They anticipate her greedy father, the Duke of Lyon, will attempt to extort money from them in exchange for recognizing their royal engagement. Opting for maximum security, she resolves to keep her disguise, glasses, wigs, and makeup a strict secret even from her own loyal servants. Reflecting on her true appearance without the disguise, she considers that for the sake of their future, it might be best to eventually tell a certain someone the truth. The dark-haired man sitting opposite them smugly declares that he is not surprised by the revelation, having suspected it all along. He casually gestures toward them, confidently referencing the beautiful face of the woman he originally fell in love with. Flashing a knowing, sharp smile, he assures them that he will never forget that remarkable face. Shifting his demeanor to strict professionalism, he promises to do his job properly while offhandedly remarking that he always knew he should have chosen her. Another young man stares ahead with a sudden, serious intensity as the atmosphere in the room grows remarkably tense. A menacing shadow falls over his eyes as he grimly realizes that something crucial is suddenly gone. Stepping forward aggressively, he confronts her about the persistent rumors that she is merely pretending to be Frederick's lover. He suddenly reaches out and grabs her arm with a firm, unyielding grip, stating that once their current task is done. Staring her down with bold intensity, he shockingly asks if she would like to abandon her post and date him instead. Estelle freezes in absolute terror as a sharp, demanding voice violently cuts through the unbearable tension. Furious at the sudden intrusion, Frederick aggressively reminds the man that they were called for work matters and demands he stop spouting irrelevant nonsense. A tense, awkward laughter abruptly echoes through the room as the three stand locked in a bitter, unyielding standoff. Sweating nervously, Estelle notes that despite knowing him since they were little, she has never seen Frederick this visibly upset. The overwhelming tension in the room causes everyone to firmly plant their feet and brace for an imminent fight. Refusing to back down from the confrontation, the dark-haired man doubles down on his bold proposition and insists that he is completely serious. Having delivered his inflammatory piece, the mysterious instigator abruptly turns his back and walks out through the grand arched doorway. A short time later, an ornate invitation wrapped in roses arrives from the royal palace, signaling that the duo will stay there for a week while the crown prince examination takes place. Frederick heavily warns her that the nobility might treat her terribly during their stay, reminding her that he explicitly told them his fiancée is a commoner. Placing a hand firmly over his heart, Frederick makes a solemn, unwavering vow to fiercely protect her no matter what happens within the palace walls. Touched by his fierce dedication, Emma smiles softly and warmly assures him that he has absolutely no reason to worry. Narrowing her eyes cautiously behind her spectacles, she mentally prepares herself, knowing she still has many lingering concerns to navigate. A bright and bustling morning finally dawns over the magnificent architecture of the sprawling royal palace. A cheerful, childish voice suddenly rings out through the crisp morning air, enthusiastically calling for its mama. Caught completely off guard by the familiar shout, Estelle whips her head around to instantly find the source of the commotion. Two adorable little girls wave enthusiastically from a window, reminding Frederick to take good care of their mom while promising to tend the roses. As the grand horse-drawn carriage pulls away from the opulent palace, the girls joyfully shout for the couple to get along well on their journey. Gazing affectionately out the window, the bespectacled woman claps her hands in sheer delight as she warmly declares how incredibly cute her children look. She continues to wave enthusiastically from the departing carriage, completely oblivious to the flustered, blushing attendants standing right beside her. Standing before the grand architecture of the royal estate, Frederick steps close and possessively murmurs that she shouldn't show such an adorably cute face in front of other men. Caught completely off guard by his sudden remark, she blinks in utter bewilderment and internally questions what he actually means by her cute face. The towering, majestic spires of the royal palace of Vallières loom impressively against the cloudy sky, marking the official beginning of their high-stakes political journey. Escorted by the elite palace staff, the couple walks elegantly down a massive, brilliantly illuminated grand corridor framed by delicate, blooming roses. Two extremely polite servants bow deeply at the ornate entryway, formally welcoming Lord Frederick and Emma while urging them to relax completely during their luxurious stay. Left entirely alone inside the opulent royal bedchamber, she clutches her hands nervously to her chest while deeply realizing the heavy implications of staying in this intimate room with Frederick. The crushing reality that it will be strictly just the two of them alone in such an isolated, romantic space finally dawns on her racing mind. Trembling slightly as she stands behind the composed Duke, she mentally screams in absolute panic, openly admitting that she is suddenly getting incredibly nervous. Startled out of her highly anxious thoughts, she visibly jolts and awkwardly stammers a panicked affirmative response to break the tense silence. Turning slightly with an incredibly suave expression, Frederick smoothly admits he has never seen her without her disguise and boldly asks if she could show him her real hair tonight. She hurriedly agrees that it is completely fine, although she quickly and self-consciously downplays her appearance by stating her flashy red hair doesn't have any particular emotion or unique charm to it. Flashing a devastatingly handsome smile, Frederick assures her he would never do anything to make her uncomfortable while simultaneously stating how much he is eagerly looking forward to tonight. Trying desperately to mask her overwhelming internal panic, she forces a bright, stiff smile and loudly proclaims that she is not worried about his intentions in the slightest. As a sudden knock echoes loudly through the ornate room, Frederick frowns slightly, quietly admitting that he has some exceptionally complicated, mixed feelings about this sudden interruption. A regal servant approaches formally, addressing His Excellency the Duke with an incredibly urgent piece of aristocratic social news. Before the attendant can even fully explain that Lady Marian of the Marquis de Mirabeau wishes to enthusiastically invite him to a tea party, Frederick sharply and instantly rejects the offer without a second thought. Both Emma and the palace messenger are left standing in completely stunned, wide-eyed silence at the sheer speed and utter brutality of Frederick's ruthless refusal. Sweating profusely under the intense glare, the persistent attendant nervously hesitates before adding that the young lady specifically and desperately requested Lord Frederick to grace the gathering with his presence. Looking extremely annoyed by the blatant social persistence, Frederick coldly retorts that he is currently busy enjoying a highly precious, deeply personal moment with his beloved fiancée. Casting a dark, undeniably menacing glare right over his broad shoulder, he aggressively orders the servant to tell Lady Marian to stop getting in his way right this instant. The terrified servant bows deeply and scurries away to deliver the harsh message, leaving Emma to nervously ask if Frederick is absolutely sure about handling the delicate political situation so bluntly. Frederick turns to her with profound, unwavering sincerity, explicitly pleading with Emma to know that he has absolutely zero romantic interest in the daughter of the Marquis de Mirabeau. Peering up at him anxiously through her round spectacles, she openly voices her lingering concern over whether it was politically dangerous or simply too much to reject such a powerful noble family so harshly. After fully realizing the sheer, undeniable stubbornness of aristocratic society, she quietly agrees that sometimes you really have to be that brutally direct for high society meddlers to finally understand boundaries. Frederick's remarkably sharp eyes soften considerably as he gazes deeply down at her, visibly moved by her incredible, mature understanding of his rather difficult political situation. Frederick apologizes for making her worry and explains that despite rejecting the persistent 16-year-old girl repeatedly, her father remained ruthlessly obstinate, prompting Emma to humorously imagine the noble's fierce rivalry with an older, commoner mother of two. Trying playfully to rationalize the aggressive political matchmaking attempt, Emma bluntly points out that technically, Frederick and the persistent young lady actually have a highly compatible age difference. Frederick instantly turns his back in sheer, palpable frustration, his voice dropping dangerously low as he firmly demands to know if she actually finds it acceptable for him to entertain other women. In a sudden burst of overwhelming, uncontainable emotion, he forcefully steps forward and urgently grips her delicate frame to pull her incredibly close to his muscular chest. Holding her tightly, he passionately demands to know what she truly thinks of their relationship, while the mere agonizing thought of Frederick being intimately involved with another woman violently flashes through her panicked mind. Wrapping his strong arms completely around her slender figure, he fully embraces her with a desperate, crushing intensity that leaves her absolutely breathless and utterly trapped in his warmth. Clinging desperately to his broad shoulders, she finally breaks and emotionally confesses that she would utterly despise it if a very important person like him ever decided to marry another woman. Burying her deeply flushed face against his sturdy chest, she shamefully admits that her fierce, possessive jealousy is an incredibly selfish and completely unreasonable thought for someone in her position. Looking up at him with incredibly vulnerable, teary eyes, she softly whispers that losing him to someone else would inevitably make her feel unimaginably lonely. Hearing her incredibly honest and raw confession completely melts away his previous anger, and a beautiful look of profound, blissful relief instantly washes over his exceptionally handsome features. Gently resting his chin heavily on her soft hair, he lovingly promises that her confession is more than enough for now and solemnly vows to always stay by her side because he also feels agonizingly lonely without her. While melting helplessly into his incredibly warm embrace, she simultaneously attempts to ground her racing thoughts by internally noting that in this world, the age of majority is 15, making 18-year-old Frederick a very fine, capable adult. Her heart races wildly and uncontrollably in her chest as she struggles to properly process the dizzying, intoxicating depths of his intense, overwhelming affection. Desperately trying to rein in her wildly fluttering heart, she mentally slaps her own cheeks, fiercely reminding herself to stay remarkably strong because they are technically just pretending to be lovers. Later that highly eventful evening, she finds herself formally invited to a massive, extravagant banquet hosted by the Queen, where all the major political players are reportedly gathering for a highly secretive meeting. Trembling slightly in her elegant evening gown, she nervously wonders what kind of perfectly composed face she should make, hyper-aware that her notoriously cruel and manipulative father is undoubtedly attending. As the towering, heavy gilded double doors of the banquet hall begin to loudly swing open into blinding light, Frederick steps remarkably close and softly promises her that everything will be perfectly fine because he is with her. Taking a deep, heavily fortifying breath to completely steady her severely frayed nerves, she whispers a soft affirmative as they finally step into the sprawling, glittering ballroom filled with the realm's highest nobility. The absolute moment they enter, deeply malicious whispers instantly sweep through the wealthy crowd like an uncontrollable wildfire, with sneering aristocrats ruthlessly mocking the older commoner girl who supposedly has a child. However, the vicious, highly critical gossip abruptly dies right in their throats the very moment the crowd gets a perfectly clear, unobstructed look at her shockingly gorgeous, brilliantly undisguised appearance. Radiating an aura of absolutely unparalleled elegance and breathtaking grace, Emma holds her head high, her profoundly striking true beauty completely silencing the entire massive room of highly judgmental nobles. The previously hostile whispers instantly transform into breathless, incredibly awestruck murmurs as the bewildered guests openly marvel at her beauty, completely and utterly unable to believe a simple commoner could ever look so divine. Completely captivated and genuinely thoroughly impressed by her overwhelming, regal presence, the stunned nobles unanimously concede that she is absolutely, undeniably worthy of being the magnificent choice of Duke Lafayette. As they confidently enter the glittering venue, spiteful nobles immediately begin whispering vicious gossip about how a girl from such a minor family could possibly be engaged to Lord Frederick. Maintaining her fragile composure despite the toxic atmosphere, Emma acutely observes how the aristocratic women wordlessly express their deep-seated disdain for people of lower rank. The suffocating tension worsens as she awkwardly shrinks under the highly unwelcome, leering gazes of the predatory aristocratic men surrounding them. Quickly rationalizing that this is simply how high society functions, she decides to completely ignore the blatant hostility to focus on her true, far more pressing concern. Turning her attention back to her charming fiancé, she is instantly overwhelmed by Frederick's incredibly intense, devastatingly hot gaze. Standing closely together, the stunning couple radiates an undeniably warm and romantic aura that completely baffles the highly judgmental onlookers. Deeply unsettled by the relentless scrutiny, she nervously realizes that the surrounding crowd is openly treating her with overwhelming, palpable suspicion. Completely unbothered by the toxic whispers, Frederick gently reassures her not to worry and smoothly encourages her to continue their formal greetings. Suddenly, a sharp gasp violently tears through her throat as a deeply familiar, utterly terrifying presence registers in her mind. An incredibly imposing, sharply dressed older man with a stern mustache suddenly steps aggressively into their immediate social circle. Pure, unadulterated panic instantly grips her entire face as she desperately tries to process the sudden, horrific encounter. She freezes entirely in place, her eyes widening significantly behind her delicate spectacles as her breath catches painfully in her throat. Trembling in absolute dread beside Frederick, she stares in sheer horror as she finally comes face to face with her cruel, estranged father.